Support for Veterans Corner Radio is made possible by M&M Printing and the Observer News of Ruskin, Florida.
Hello and welcome to Veterans Corner Radio Podcasts, information for and about veterans. For this edition of the podcast, host Joe Mulberger sits down with retired United States Marine Corps Colonel Bill Davis. Colonel Davis's career spans several decades, which included deployment to Operation Desert Storm, as well as his involvement with warfighting capabilities as an officer assigned with Systems Command. Here now is Joe Mulberger with Veterans Corner Radio on Veterans Corner Radio Podcasts.
Welcome to Veterans Corner Radio, a show dedicated to providing information to all those who have served our country's military and to their families. Now, here is your host, combat veteran and educator, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Joe Mulberger.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Joe Mulberger, and you're listening to Veterans Corner Radio. Today, our veteran is United States Marine retired Colonel William Davis. Can I call you Bill, sir?
Joe, absolutely.
So tell us about yourself. When were you born? Where were you born? And where did you grow up?
So I was actually born in 1964 at Camp Pendleton. My dad was an instructor at the infantry training regiment there at the time. So I was born there in 64. We lived there for a little while, and then he got pulled to recruiting duty. We moved to Oregon. He went to Vietnam, and we lived on a farm with a friend of my mom's up in Bremerton, Washington. And when he came back, we ended up in Montana. Crazy places because Dad was on recruiting duty. And remember, this was still under the draft. I remember as a kid, people showing up. It was bad in Montana at the time. The copper mine had closed. People would show up on our doorstep. And it wasn't until I joined the Marine Corps and I learned the history a little better. I'm like, it was in the middle of the Vietnam War and people were asking my dad to ship them. I'm like, wow. But yeah, I surprised everybody when I decided to join, quote unquote, the family business. I was in college. I actually had done Air Force ROTC for a couple of quarters. I was thinking that I wanted to fly, but that's tight. I didn't quite have the vision and some other things. But I found my tribe with the Marine Corps of all things. And I'll tell you, that was the toughest thing to go tell Dad because we used to have to fish in Alaska at this family fishing site. Hey, Dad, I can't join you this summer. Like, well, why not? I'm like, I'm going to go to Marine Corps Officer Candidate School. He looks at me and goes, that was the conversation, But, it just worked. Something clicked. I enjoyed it, probably because the Marine Corps is kind of the 911 Swiss Army knife service. There's a little of everything going on. And it clicked for me. I enjoyed what we did. I was fortunate enough to get commissioned in 87, ended up as a ground supply originally, and then converted to logistics as I got promoted further. Was in Hawaii. That's the story too. So didn't really want ground supply at first, but if you know the Marine Corps, everyone goes to the basic school. Every officer all goes to the basic school. And from there, you get your MOS. Now, if you're either a lawyer, an aviator, or ground. Well, ground is like 26 MOSs, and you don't find out till halfway or through what you're going to get. Oh, they mess with you too. If you're not familiar, they got dartboards and spinning wheels, and they're all sweating you about what you're going to get and joking around about it. But what it came down to is I could have had one of my top three choices, but the captain said, "Hey, Bill, when he called me my first name, I knew it was that was a problem." He said, "Bill, if you'd be willing to take something else, like 6 other guys could get one of their top 3 choices." So it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, all right, I'll take one for the team. But it worked out great. I got so many opportunities to serve, but that's how I ended up in Hawaii. I said, sir, if I got to take something I don't want, let me go someplace really cool to do it. And so I ended up in Hawaii. And then from there, Desert Storm, 90, we deployed out in Desert Storm, did that for the year, came back. And then, just kind of interested, different tours, training command in Little Creek, reserve, instructor staff with the reserves, a couple of tours in Louisiana with the Marine Corps Reserve, Systems Command. And then also a couple of years with U.S. Northcom. And that was fascinating stuff that we can talk about more if you'd like. And then I
So,
retired in 2011 as a colonel, I left as the head of facilities for the Marine Corps Reserve.
wow. Now, where did you go to college?
University of Washington. So dad, it was funny. My mom's side of the family all lived up in the Seattle area. And so dad was stationed at Camp Pendleton and he was getting ready to retire. So they shipped me off to live up in Seattle with my grandparents so I wouldn't have to change high schools, like so many military kids do, and mine did. And I was a, military brat bouncing around. But they did that. So I had that opportunity to go there. The funny thing is my dad retires and he uses the GI Bill and he graduates from the University of Washington in 82 in the spring. I started at the University of Washington as a freshman in the fall of 82.
Oh,
Mush Huskies mush.
very
All right.
nice. And what did you end up with a degree in?
Of all things, economics.
Wow.
It was funny because when you go to officer candidate school, because I was doing ROTC and then I saw OCS, I'm like, oh yeah, the ad was great. You get that little trifold, and it's like, oh yeah, hey, come to summer camp with the Marine Corps. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. That'd be so much better than what I'm doing right now. Just 6 weeks of summer camp at Quantico. Oh yeah, man. It was a good time. But yeah, I had to figure out to go through OCS, you had to pick a degree. So I literally had highlighted all these degrees and I figured out the one I was closest to, and that was economics.
Wow. What a way to decide what
But
your degree is going to be.
But funny enough, I used it a lot as a logistics officer. A lot of the principles, it was amazing how much of that you use in a business setting within the Marine Corps as a logistics officer. And in my almost 2 years at Marine Corps Systems Command, how often that came into play when you're looking at weapons systems and programs and total ownership costs and trade-offs. It really became more applicable than I ever thought it would be.
So within the Air Force, we have acquisition officers, and they tend to be double E's, electrical engineers for the primary group of them. And then you end up comparing notes with other folks that are in similar responsibilities with the sister components, service components. And then you find folks like yourself that did a tour in systems command. You're probably surrounded by a bunch of engineers and you're looking to plug in the key information from a logistical standpoint that makes sense. And you think it makes sense. And then the realization is they actually understand it as well. And I know we had a situation where I was the Air Force logistics officer who had to present the case to a room full of engineers and money people. And it was 7 different upgrades to one airframe. And they all had different pots of money that would trigger at different times that did not necessarily align with when those program upgrades were supposed to take place. And we needed them to take place in a very specific order. And so I turned into the messenger in that environment, and they instantly went to the boards. They identified who needed to get back with Congress, in what order, so that it would all synchronize, and it absolutely worked. And it's an environment that is very critical. And so when you're telling our audience about your days in systems command, I can only consider that you probably had very similar experiences, especially with a background in economics, in trying to rally support for certain weapons systems. And of course, you have everyone in the Marines is a gun first. So tell us a little bit about how perhaps an experience you had that came under your time in systems command.
It's interesting. Like you said, you have acquisition professionals and then others that get pulled in and you do some of the basic coursework, but you're not going to stay within the acquisition community. So, but you come in and you provide the expertise you can. And so as a logistics officer, I was looking at ground programs and, Joe, that was a really great point you made. There's you got to work this critical path to thread the needle. Complex weapon systems, multiple suppliers all over the place, the production lines, it's extremely difficult to pull off. And it explains a lot of the challenges we have. But one of the things I looked at, worked on there was this idea of total ownership cost. And the Marine Corps was transitioning because you had the acquisition guys and then you had the people that had to maintain in the fleet, and you had to marry those together better. And that was always the push and pull. And the logistics, yeah, there's a really great thing. Look it up later. I'm not going to do it right now off the top of my head, but the British Royal Marines or the British Army has a great quote. It's about logisticians are a sad, bitter race of men. Just Google that and it'll tell you the whole thing. Feared in war, despised in peace, and all this stuff. But it was about, the program managers, because you're like, as the acquisition logistician, you're trying to make sure, is this thing ready to be fielded? Can this thing go to war and work the way it's supposed to be intended? So you're looking at facilities and training and maintenance and supply parts and all that stuff. And the program manager, I need to get this thing in the hands of those guys right now. I'm like, I want to get it in the hands of the guys right now as well. However, I want to make sure once it's in their hands, they know how to use it. If it breaks, it can be fixed. If they're missing something, they can get it. And so there's always that tension between those parts. And at the end of the day, you make it work. And sometimes there's challenges, and there always will be. It just, all the different, and sometimes you look at programs and you're reviewing it like, hey, did you guys really analyze this piece here? Because I don't know, that's really safe. I mean, I know we're in a risky profession, warfighting and everything, but sometimes maybe we should look at this again before we put that out to the field. But I think the big one for me was working on, there was always the specific program aspects, but the big project was working with other echelons of the command to where we kind of embrace this total ownership process, and then working with our contractors, developing a software. And this, you're talking early 2000s, internet's still just coming around. We didn't have AI. Now this stuff's so easy. But back then, you're talking to programmers and saying, hey, listen, I have this system and this system. Can we get them to talk so that our program managers and the sponsors at the logistics command and the people in the field can see this visibility of this entire program lifespan? And that was a heavy lift back then. I mean, of course, we're still using, Coltran, COBOL, Fortran. Now I'm messing up the names. This is before C+ and all that. I mean, and those programs are still running in the background somewhere, Joe, the same stuff they were using when you and I were on active duty.
Somebody with an 8088 computer hoping it doesn't explode because it's got all the background information that everybody's relying on.
Tempest certified with a 10-inch floppy disk. No joke. When I went through supply school, we actually had a class on IBM 10294 cards. When I got to Hawaii, they had this big machine covered in plastic, and the master gunny, I was like, hey, Master Guns, what's that? Second lieutenant. Hey, Master Guns, what's that? He goes, well, that's the IBM machine. We're keeping it just in case we ever need it again. I'm like, oh man, here we go. So, and that's only 40 years ago. I mean, just within so talking 10294 or 10294 card IBM punch cards, right? And this is an 88. Get to the fleet in 88, go to Desert Storm. From the time in 88 that I left supply school with those 10-inch floppies, and by the time we got to Desert Storm, we're using those remember the little hard plastic 3.5 discs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they?
That
3.5 inch discs or something. The rigid discs.
Rigid discs.
So you end up in Desert Storm. We're at the 35th anniversary of Desert Storm. So this interview will be available forever and ever and ever. But it's May of 2026, and that we're having this interview. But we're in the 35th anniversary of Desert Storm. It also happens to be our semi-quincentennial when we're celebrating our 250th birthday anniversary of the United States. There you are in Desert Storm. Where exactly did you end up in Desert Storm?
Yeah, it was funny. I had just gotten engaged to my wife like the week before, and I went to her house or her apartment, right? And I'm watching TV because we were going to go out and do some shopping. What are you watching? Oh, this guy just invaded this little country. Well, you think you'll go? Like, nah, they'd have to mobilize I was in K-Bay, Marine Corps base, Kaneohe Bay. No, they'd have to, the whole place would be going. Next weekend, I'm sitting in a classroom, like the first guys have already left and you're going in the next. But I was the XO, so I had to wrangle up all the cats and dogs and the left behinds and every piece of vehicle equipment that we could get on life support, load it onto C5 out of Hickam and head to Saudi Arabia and get there. So we got to Saudi Arabia. It was pretty wild because I was there by the end of August. I think I got there the 25th or 26th. So we were early.
Prince
First Marine
Sultan?
Expeditionary Brigade was the first guys to, I'm sorry, 7th Meb out of Pendleton got there first, and then we came in next, and we were all in Al Jubail, this big
Oh,
Saudi port, right? And the Air Force, they're already flying missions out of their bases. The Army had dropped in airborne guys. Oh, that was funny too. Those poor guys, they drop them in with 3 days worth of chow. We're the closest people. They're all raiding well, they didn't call them 7-Elevens, whatever they had up there. Every convenience store north of Al Jubail was getting raided by the Army guys trying to find chow. When we landed and started offloading the ships in Al Jubail, these guys were like, "Can we get some food?" Yeah, man, we got you covered, brother. But it was just this big mess. If people get it, you're taking axes to containers and open them up and seeing what you get. Because remember, this idea of databases and printable spreadsheets was very concentrated. Not everyone had them. So, you're pouring through stacks of paper printouts, with the little sprockets on the side, fin holes, trying to figure out who gets what and disperse it as fast as you can, because that was the first major usage of that. So, there was these challenges, but you got it all done, got everything set up, and then, hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait. So I was supposed to, I was there in the port, and then we were going to send guys north, and I was working on that. And then some Marines showed up out of Okinawa fully equipped, and they sent them. And then one day they said, "Hey, Davis, you're going to go to this combat support detachment in Bahrain because they got a warehouse officer there, and we need to bring the warehouse officer here to set up the warehouse. And you're not a warehouse guy." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So a dude shows up in a rental car. I'm like, "Wait a minute, this ain't right." And we go the opposite direction. But we ended up in Sheikh Isa, Bahrain, in the south end of the country, and we were supporting the fixed wing, the Marine Aircraft Wing fixed wing. We had some of the first stealth fighters there. Nobody talked about them. They were at the end of the runway, and we had some Patriots. And my hat's off to Army Patriots because of all of the times that we had Scud attacks on that base. The one time that got close, the Hawk missile system didn't pick it up. The Patriot battery did. We were in our racks, man. And all of a sudden you hear this ripping across the sky. And anyone that's ever heard a Patriot or been close, that the sound. And I look over at the warrant officer because I had the headquarters and service platoon, and the warrant officer maintenance guy. We were the two platoon commanders. Man, Lenny, that didn't sound good. The next thing, you're throwing on gas masks and running, hauling butt for the bomb shelters for that. I tried to, as a ground supply officer, as H&S guy, I tried to help out everyone that was there. We had Air Force, we had Army, we had Navy guys, we had a bunch of Marines there, fixed wing Marine assets. And I tried to, make my way around. The Patriot guys, I'd talk to them several times. I'm like, "Guys, I need you Frosty. So if there's anything you need that's not specific to this weapon system I can't get you, ask me first, because I'll try and help you out." We had Navy Seabees with us. We had bulk fuel guys. We had a little of everything. But that's that teamwork thing. And that was some of my first lessons in teamwork, was being deployed to that installation with all those people, all in the good fight, working together. And while you and I joke around earlier, and the services all joke around, at the end of the day, it really is about the team. And some people at the top really thought through what we need to be able to execute national security strategy and the elements that it requires to make that happen, and to train, educate, and equip those people so when the time goes downrange, we all count on each other. Hoorah.
it's quite a pleasure to be a part of all of that and to see it unfold, and then have somebody go, "So you have a big clearance?" Well, yeah. Well, but the reality of having a big clearance is that you're the trusted agent that won't, spiel what the plan is, because the plan has sacred portions to it. And also, when you're in that environment and bad guys are trying to kill you, and you make that realization, and you're really thankful for the outgoing pouring of fire that's on our side, and you have an absolute appreciation for fire superiority, and you realize, as the person that was just, befuddling, and this and that, there are absolutely no what do you call them? What are everybody is clinging to their God when all of a sudden it's the firestorm going on. So there are no atheists in foxholes.
No. And you have to trust and respect that the other people went through similar training and are just as professional as you are to execute their mission to help save your bacon in ways that you can't.
Absolutely.
And it was interesting to being there, K-Bay, second lieutenant, And I picked up first lieutenant right before we left, and we're heading off and we're mobilizing everybody to go to war, right? So you flash forward, lieutenant colonel. I'm a lieutenant colonel. Actually, I think it was I was a major. I was a major when it started. I was had transferred from Systems Command to Headquarters Marine Corps Reserve Affairs, and on 9/11. And on 9/11, I actually had taken the day off. I'd went up to the Pentagon the weekend, the week before. I'd been in the Pentagon meeting with all these guys that I was going to be, working with in my new role as the ground program advocate for the reserves. And I'd been up there Friday, and the guys were all like, "Hey, yeah, we can't wait. In a couple of weeks, we're going to move into the new wing." And then Monday, I'd taken Monday off, had family in town. We toured the White House that morning at 8:50. I'll never forget it. 8:56. I'm standing in front of the White House. I look at my watch. I was like, "Hey guys, the museum doesn't open till 10. Let's go to the Reagan building, hang out there." And we were in the Reagan building when I found out what was going on. You got to extract the family, get them out of DC, get back to Quantico, wait an hour and a half at the gate because everything's shut down. And then now you went from being mobilized to being a guy that's working where we are mobilizing people. And so that's what I did for the beginning of 9/11 was working at the Headquarters Marine Corps Reserve Affairs as we figured out how to do the next great mobilization of our armed forces.
What year did you retire?
2011.
So 2011. What are you up to now?
So interesting. So 2011, I went to Northcom, did some cool stuff there with weapons of mass destruction, all that security clearance stuff we talked about. But I ended up short-toured. Right after Katrina, I went back to New Orleans to become the head of facilities for the Marine Corps Reserve, the chief of staff for facilities. And I did that for 5 years because they wanted three different generals, kept me there because, Bill, you're going to be the guy that finishes all these projects. Okay, sir, got it. General. And, but towards the end, wrapping it up, I had a boss I worked for before, a 2-star general retired in the area, and they asked if they've been trying to build this charter high school, post-Katrina in the New Orleans area. And a boss I'd worked for before, General Dave Mize, "Hey, Bill, we like all these guys you've been telling us about, but everyone really wants you because everybody in the New Orleans community knows you because you've been working all of this, close the Navy base, open the Marine Corps base." And, I had to think about it, and not long, but I said, you know what? I could come back and be an action officer at Headquarters Marine Corps, or I could go do something here locally and impact some kids directly. And it was great. It really, it was not easy, building a charter school from scratch. And I'm saying, like, I was the first person. I hired a principal. Cecilia Garcia was my partner in that. And we hired staff. I built the building. We got it all. We did that in 3 years. We went from being in a temporary site with a freshman class 3 years later into a brand new facility. And I'll tell you, most places in New Orleans, 7, 8 years still didn't have contracts. So we made that happen. But it was, while I was there, a lot of my cadets, because it was Marine Corps JROTC involved heavy, were young Marines. And my son had been in the Young Marines in the New Orleans area in the 90s. And a lot of the volunteers were still there. So about 3 years into that, I was offered another job opportunity, and I turned it down because I said, I really need to finish the school, and I need to graduate my first class. And so I did that. So I turned down this job opportunity, and like 3 weeks later, I get a call from a volunteer with Young Marines. "Hey, let's go have lunch." I thought we were going to talk about the program. He says, "No." He goes, "Hey, this guy that's the head of the Young Marines is retiring. You should put in for the job." I'm like, huh. And it was the following year. So it was kind of a providence thing. It was a networking thing. And I would tell that to people retiring. Networking, never know how that networking is going to work. Your professional reputation is everything when you retire because people don't have to accept you. It's not called orders. It's about choices. It's about interviewing, and it's about hiring people based on reputation and experience and skills. And that's what led me to here. So in 2015, I graduated that first class. I had finished construction, and I packed it up, my wife and I, and we came here to the D.C. region, and I've been running the Young Marines program ever since, taking it from that one school of 700 kids to a national program with 5,000 kids spread all from Japan all the way to the East Coast and everywhere in between.
What's the name of that school that's in New Orleans that you had?
Oh, yeah. Oh, name drop that bad boy. It's the New Orleans Military and Maritime Academy. And I'll tell you, that's a great story too. Joe, I'd be happy to link you with them. But you're taking It is a free, open public charter school that services all the kids in the New Orleans metropolitan area. It's all Marine Corps JROTC. There's only a couple of schools like it in the country, and it's just wildly successful because of the structure and the integrated support that the kids get while they're there. Chris Schlafer took it over for me, and he executed the plan, and now it's an 8 through 12 school. Those 5 years make all the difference for those kids. Just like my program now is ages 8 through high school completion, and that structure, that support is what helps these kids become successful in life and gives a lot of purpose for myself. You continue to serve just in a different fashion your country.
So junior ROTC, they call those youth, they're cadets. What is a young Marine called?
Young Marine.
Young Marine. Oh, okay. So there's no using the term cadet in that environment.
No, that's reserved for the JROTC programs. And I have kids that do both. A lot of my high school level kids in the Young Marines program, they will do both. It's really fascinating to me that they'll do JROTC and Young Marines, and not all the same. I have kids doing Army JROTC, Air Force JROTC. It doesn't matter, because the leadership lessons they learn, the self-discipline they learn, that stuff is all common. It's the service histories and the type uniforms that are different, but the core values that they take away, they're all the same, and they're all good for them, whatever they choose to do in life.
So today you carry quite the wonderful title. It is the National Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of Young Marines. You're the head honcho of Young Marines today. How amazing is that?
It is. Well, it's amazing, but it's the obligation, So a lot of kids, when they see what all I have to do, like, I don't know, I want to do that, sir. Well, remember, it took me, 30 some years to be sitting in this seat, and you work your way into those things to give you the skills and the confidence to do it. And, every day you're always thinking about what next, but every morning you get up and think, there's 5,000 kids, 2,000 volunteers, probably 10,000 parents and guardians that are counting on you to run a good program that's going to do what that program says it's going to do for their child, or that supports that volunteer execute that mission. So there's an awful lot of responsibility that comes with the authority. And I think everyone in a leadership position knows that. And that's the other thing we talk to kids about too, is understanding the nature of leadership. There's two sides to that.
We've been talking today with someone who absolutely sets the gold standard, because here on Veterans Corner Radio, we talk about our veterans being worth their value in gold. And we thank you, retired United States Marine Corps Colonel Bill Davis. Sir, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your service. And thank you so much for what you're doing for America's youth and really the future leaders of our United States of America.
Hey, Joe, thanks for the opportunity to talk about this program. I mean, sharing about myself is great. Talking about our kids in the future is outstanding. youngmarines.org, check it out. You'll see my potato head in there somewhere in the staffing pictures. But yeah, Joe, thank you so much for what you're doing for getting these stories out to our country as well. It's all awesome.
Outstanding.
You've been listening to Veterans Corner Radio with your host, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Joe Muhlberger. The views expressed on this program are those of Joe and his guests, and our opinions based on the best available information. In matters of law or governmental regulation, it will always be best to check with the appropriate agency. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us for the next program on Veterans Corner Radio.
Here's a quick final thought. If you're enjoying these podcasts, why not take a minute to subscribe or mark Veterans Corner Radio as a favorite? It's easy, and you'll be set to be among the first to find out when new podcasts are published. And thanks again for listening to Veterans Corner Radio.